Hello, my friend. I'm very glad to see you again on my channel. Get comfortable, because today we have a very controversial story about a boy named Joseph Augustus Zarella, who was found hidden and dead in a box.
At around 2 p.m. on February 26, 1957, Tuesday, a young man approached the Homicide Division of the Philadelphia Police Department to report a discovery of a deceased individual. The individual identified himself as Frederick Benonize, 26 years old, a student at LaSalle College. He claimed that the day before, around 3:15 p.m., in a desolate area known as Fox Chase, north of Philadelphia, near a road referred to as Susquehanna Road, he found a large cardboard box. Inside the box, he observed the unclothed body of a child. To verify the claim, several patrol units were dispatched to the specified location. The first to discover the large cardboard box, discarded near the road approximately 450 meters from the Shepherd School for Girls, was Patrol Officer Elmer Palmer. He confirmed Benonize's statement. Indeed, there was a child's body inside the box. Literally, 4 to 5 meters from the box with the body, towards the road, a new velvet cap was found. The police believed it could have belonged to the perpetrator, who likely operated in the darkness and couldn't locate the dropped headwear. Additionally, not far from the box, a brown child's shoe was discovered. The second of the pair was found 40 meters further along the road. Initially, detectives assumed that the shoes belonged to the deceased child, but this assumption was later disproven. The child's foot was significantly smaller. The Philadelphia police organized extensive search operations in the Fox Chase area. Large police forces, along with 270 police academy trainees and 50 Fairmount Park security personnel, were mobilized to comb the area. During this operation, aimed at finding the clothing of the deceased, all abandoned structures within a 10 kilometers radius were inspected, and local residents were interviewed. The search yielded no results. To initiate the search for the person who abandoned the dead child in the wilderness, the investigators had only the body, a cardboard box, a blanket, and a velvet cap. A meticulous examination conducted by forensic traceologists and forensic pathologists revealed the following. A. The body belongs to a white boy aged 4 to 5 years, height 102.9 centimeters, weight 12 kilograms. The recorded weight was significantly below the norm, indicating malnutrition. The child was completely naked. There was a significant hematoma on the head without skin wounds. The body was dry and clean. The nails on the fingers and toes were short. The palm of the right hand and the soles of both feet exhibited significant changes in the skin, indicative of prolonged immersion in water. The water immersion occurred immediately before the child's death, as the skin had not had time to return to its natural state. This peculiar change in the skin prevented fingerprinting of the right hand of the deceased. The child's hair was short and roughly cut, not exceeding 1.2 centimeters in length. The cut hair remained on the child's shoulders and body. Whoever cut it did not bother to brush it away. Additionally, the child himself did not shake off the cut hair. This suggested that the child's hair was cut after death. On the chin, there was an L-shaped scar with each side measuring 6 to 7 millimeters. The body showed no bone fractures, bruises, or abrasions. Traces of 3 surgical operations were noted, on the left ankle, in the groin, and on the chest, performed skillfully and well before death. The healing of the surgical incisions proceeded normally and had no impact on the child's death. Rigor mortis had completely passed, indicating that more than 48 hours had elapsed since the time of death. Post-mortem changes were mildly expressed, suggesting prolonged exposure of the body to cold. The daytime air temperature in the surroundings of Philadelphia in the latter half of February 1957 fluctuated around -3 degrees Celsius. Evidently, soon after death, the body was taken outside and was not indoors anymore. The forensic pathologist Joseph Spellman vaguely determined the date of death as ranging from 2 to 14 days. He cited head compression as the cause of death. The autopsy revealed that the stomach of the deceased was empty, and a small amount of a black substance of unidentified nature was found in the child's esophagus. Toxicological analysis indicated that the child was not poisoned, not under the influence of alcohol or sedatives at the time of death. No signs of sexually related trauma were found on the child's body. Assistant to Joseph Spellman during the autopsy was the young Dr. Remington Bristow. He took photographs of all stages of the autopsy and became very interested in the case. It turned out that Bristow, over the years, tried to unravel the mysteries of the boy in the box, and thanks in large part to him, this story became widely known in the United States. We will encounter this doctor by profession and detective by calling again in the future. B. The box had dimensions of 38.1 centimeters * 48.3 centimeters * 88.9 centimeters and the label, fragile, handle with care. Thanks to the preserved sticker, the place of its sale was quickly identified, John Penny's warehouse at the intersection of 69th Street and Chestnut Street in the Upper Darby area, approximately 25 kilometers from the discovery site. The box was used to store and transport a child's woven crib. The cribs went on sale in December 1956. From December 3, 1956, to February 16, 1957, 12 such cribs were shipped from the Upper Darby warehouse. The blanket, made of cotton flannel with green squares on a white background, measuring 162.6 centimeters * 193 centimeters. The blanket was inside the box, presumably used to wrap the boy's body initially. A piece measuring 78.8 centimeters * 66 centimeters was missing, and efforts to locate it were unsuccessful. Approximately 1/3 of the remaining piece was stained with motor oil. In principle, the blanket could have been a significant asset to the investigation. If a suspect could be identified, the presence of a specific type of motor oil or the absence of a portion of the blanket in their home could strongly link that person to the body in the box. The cap, made of dark blue velvet, with a leather strap and buckle at the back. The manufacturer's label on the lining read, Hannah Robbins, South Philadelphia. By February 26, 1957, detectives had located the owner of the workshop. The woman recalled both the cap and the person who bought it. The buyer was a man aged 26 to 30, dressed in a blue work suit similar to those worn by gas station attendants. He made the purchase in November 1956. Hannah Robbins was confident in the accuracy of her testimony, as she vividly remembered the buyer. He had asked to alter the cap by sewing on a leather strap, which was originally absent. Robbins assured investigators that she could identify the buyer. There was no firm certainty that the owner of the blue cap was somehow connected to the body in the box, but it was crucial to find and question this person. Establishing the origin of items related to the deceased boy became the primary task of the investigation at this stage. One group of investigators sought to trace the paths of the 12 children's cribs purchased from John Penny, another attempted to identify the buyer of the blanket, and a third group looked for the buyer of the velvet cap. Theoretically, all these leads should converge on one person. The police group was led by Captain David Roberts, the senior inspector of the Homicide Investigation Division. Time passed. During the week, the police worked on the tasks assigned to them. 8 out of the 12 buyers of the woven cribs were found and checked. All of them were found to be unrelated to the body in the box. The remaining 4 were never located. Interestingly, the crib dealer Penny was so distressed by the fact that he couldn't assist the police in their search that, as of February 1957, he stopped conducting cash transactions. Since then, he only sold his products by mail or checks. The manufacturer of the blanket was identified. However, investigators hit another dead end here. The company owned 2 large factories in Quebec, Canada, and Swannanoa, North Carolina, USA. Both productions operated with the same patterns and materials. In principle, The blanket could have been purchased in either Canada or the USA. The number of woven blankets with this pattern numbered in the millions. Finding the buyer of this specific blanket seemed impossible. High hopes were pinned on finding the owner of the blue velvet cap. However, the police faced failure here as well. With a photo of the cap and a description of the deceased boy, detectives visited 143 gas stations and construction sites. They interviewed over 1,000 workers dressed in the same blue work suits as the cap's buyer. None of them could recall the man matching the police description. None of those questioned had seen the dark blue velvet cap before or knew anything about the family that had recently lost a child. Consulting local doctors also yielded no positive results for the investigators. Over the course of 1.5 months, more than 4,000 pediatricians and surgeons residing in Philadelphia were interviewed. None of them recognized any instances of treating a boy matching the description of the deceased child. Roughly a week after the discovery of the body in the box, the district attorney's office and the police department began leaning towards the necessity of conducting a large-scale search operation with the broadest possible involvement of the public. Since the child's body had not yet been identified, making identification a top priority in the investigation was deemed essential. This could only be achieved, it seemed, by alerting the residents of Philadelphia and surrounding counties. Law enforcement authorities decided to release a poster containing a detailed description of all the evidence and circumstances related to the case, urging residents to inform the police in case they recognized the items or the child. It was emphasized that residents should pay attention to the disappearance of familiar children, for instance, a neighbor's child who used to regularly play on the playground but went missing since mid-February. During the preparation of this informational campaign, Senior Inspector David Roberts made a rather unexpected assumption for his colleagues. He stated that the police should search not for a boy, but for a girl. The deceased child, although biologically a boy, was raised as a girl. During his lifetime, he had long hair and wore girls' dresses, and all neighbors and relatives perceived him as a girl. Roberts supported this unexpected conclusion with the following reasoning: the deceased child was quite carelessly shaved, and the fallen hair remained on his body. The child was shaved while naked, and his body was not covered in any way. If the haircut had been done while the child was alive, either the barber would have covered the body with a cloth, brushed off the cut hair, or the child would have done it himself. Cut hair irritates the skin and causes discomfort, so a living person would undoubtedly have tried to get rid of this irritating factor. Since none of this was done, it could be confidently assumed that the haircut occurred after death. Why? The only possible answer: the killer was getting rid of some evidence that could lead to their exposure. What revealing evidence could be in a child's everyday hairstyle? Only its atypical nature. The hair was likely long, like that of girls. The criminal understood that long hair on a boy's head would immediately raise suspicions about the mother having some deviation, so the hair had to be cut. Continuing logically with his deductions, Senior Inspector Roberts suggested that the deceased boy was raised in an incomplete family. He lived with his mother, as it seemed almost improbable that a father would allow his son to be disfigured, dressing him in girls' clothes and tying bows on his head. Most men would perceive such feminization of their sons as a personal insult. It must be said that Roberts's hypothesis, despite its unexpectedness, deserves the utmost attention. Such feminine deviations do exist, and the result of such upbringing often includes the development of homosexual tendencies in boys. The assumption of the senior inspector was taken into account, and subsequently, the police sought information not only about the missing boy but about children in general. Since March 1957, posters urging residents to inform authorities about any known cases of child disappearances began appearing on the streets of Philadelphia, in public places, and in stores. Over 400,000 leaflets dedicated to the child in the box were distributed to city residents along with gas bills. The child's body was in the morgue and was presented for identification to anyone willing. Gradually, the flow of people wishing to see the body of the boy in the box dwindled. It no longer made sense to keep it in the morgue, and on July 27, 1957, the unidentified child's body was buried in the cemetery of unclaimed bodies near the Philadelphia State Hospital in the Byberry area. The burial plot was marked as number 191 and was the only one funded by the city budget, with a modest memorial erected. The inscription on the plaque read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." Remington Bristow, a former assistant medical examiner during the autopsy of the deceased child in February 1957, devoted a significant amount of time to investigating the case of the boy in the box. It can be said that this individual was obsessed with the mystery surrounding the child's death. In his personal archive, Bristow preserved photographs he took during the autopsy, along with numerous materials related to the investigation. For instance, in the mid-60s, Bristow managed to obtain from the police a blue cap believed to be worn by the presumed murderer, which he used in his inquiries. In the mid-90s, Bristow's heirs returned this cap to the police storage. Throughout his life, Remington collected materials on similar cases of child killings. In the archive, examined after his death, materials on 24 unsolved cases of child deaths were found. Notably, all the deceased were boys. In an attempt to investigate the boy in the box case, Remington Bristow reached out to a well-known psychic, Florence Sternfeld, who lived in the state of New Jersey. Sternfeld claimed that the deceased child was connected to an old house with a playground in the backyard, not very far from where the body was discovered. In the fall of 1960, Bristow brought Sternfeld to the location where the box with the boy's body was found. The psychic led the doctor to a two-story house, where it was revealed that the Foster family lived. The Fosters took in children whose parents had abandoned them, providing them with shelter and housing for many months and even years. It could be described as a private children's home. The Fosters sought families willing to adopt children and received some compensation from grateful adoptive parents. The compensation they received ensured the Fosters a decent and stable income, allowing them not to work elsewhere. Typically, the Fosters had 5 to 6 children awaiting adoption, but sometimes the number could reach 20. Bristow and Sternfeld paid a visit to the Fosters in the fall of 1960. According to Bristow's records, the Fosters behaved cautiously and denied any involvement in the fate of the boy in the box. They did not provide any substantial information during that visit, and, of course, the hosts did not allow the visitors to inspect their home. However, after this visit, the Fosters unexpectedly announced their decision to move and sell the house. In May 1961, Bristow visited the Foster home again, this time posing as a potential buyer accompanied by a real estate agent. Remington Bristow claimed that during this visit, the Fosters could not prevent the inspection of the house, and he managed to discover something interesting. In the end, Remington Bristow's theory boiled down to the following. In late 1956, the Fosters took in an illegitimate child born to their daughter. By this time, a boy with significant intellectual disabilities had been living in their home for quite some time. He was not properly supervised and was poorly fed because it was clear that finding adoptive parents for the boy would be challenging. In February 1957, the boy committed some transgression that angered the elders and led to a severe punishment, not necessarily by the Fosters themselves. It could have been administered by another, older child. The result of the punishment was a head injury with fatal consequences for the boy.